Hello. Um, okay. Anyways, I'll be answering the questions and then I'll start with the questions and then go into my roadmap. Then I'll be breaking down what it could have been better there. Right. So, the first question was, what did I learn from the alumni's feedback? And then my answer was, first I learned about the justifications and false conceptions that are made, right? And I saw how that could be the difference between a speech that has excellent link chains and a speech that is disconnected at certain points, and also just a flawless speech in terms of justification and credibility, just because your evidence is directly correlated to your message, right? I learned about actually giving credit to the people that the actors in your speech. So, whereas when I was giving my speech, I may have just briefly mentioned the people, but I didn't actually give them any background or at least let the audience know who they were. I just assumed that they were. Sorry, I assumed that they knew who they were. That also could lead to some disconnections in your argument because your audience wouldn't know who you're talking about, or it could be left to interpretation, and that's never good in a speech. I learned how excellent an analogy could be if used correctly. Right. So I learned that if used correctly, you could connect with your audience much easier and faster, and the level of credibility that you would already have just by giving a good analogy, and how it also brings your audience in so they can take in what you're saying easier. And then I learned, or I guess I saw in action what one, love first, teach second, and critique. Sorry, uh, affirm before critique actually looks like and what it is, because the alumni were, every time they would make a comment, they actually, one, they were actually listening, so how important it is to listen, and then two, they would show you that they're listening by affirming you and critiquing you. And they didn't give surface level comments, which also demonstrated how important it is to listen. I'm not sure about that was it for what I have learned, but what scholarships should have been included in my claims? I think the most important one would have to been the Bible. I think if I was going to reference the Bible, that I should have been more specific to the content in the Bible and expounded upon it instead of just briefly mentioning two stories inside the Bible. That would have supported my claims much more. Also, maybe more quotes, or not even more quotes, but taking in what other people are saying, so researching what more influential people are saying about my topic so that I can actually learn from it. Some of those people, like the next question asked, would be like Martin Luther King, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and certain stories in the Bible. Well, because they all have, different quotes, and they all have, different quotes and different things to say, things about fear and the motivation of it within their speeches. I think that was all of the skills. Okay. The next question was, how could you have better applied your concept to your audience? First, my justifications were vague. When discussing my examples, like with the Daniel and the Jonah, I just went straight into it. bring my audience in by giving them more context. So I assumed that they knew everything, which could cause confusion. I also could have been more sorry, personal with the anecdote, or at least I could have brought in more factors that would contribute to it, so that that more people would be able to take it in. So when I give an example of this, I was talking about, like, you have fear, but people have different fears. Maybe like the fear of failure, or their fear of what other people think, or stuff of that sort. I could have said some of those and then gave the solutions to them, or what I thought would be like the solution in the terms of my solution. So I would apply my solution to their problems, and that way it'd bring them in and connect to the audience more. I think that not only would have entertained it, but connected with them. I think, well, another question also asked about my call to action, but I think my call to action was fine, although I could have been a bit more explicit in my call to action. I could have said it more directly and then gave them steps so they could actually have a roadmap to fulfill it. Because what I said was a bit vague, but I think I wanted the point to get across, but I didn't tell them how exactly to get across. So maybe I could work on that also, being a bit more specific to it. And then I was going through my roadmap, and anything that I thought I could have done better, I highlighted yellow. And then I went through all the questions that I thought could be better. So the first question was my message, right? The message was, you should use your fear as a motivator to be great, because fear is the best motivator to be great, right? And then I brought up in doing so, well, let me start over. One, research, because I thought that this was just supposed to be a sermon and I had to include the Bible. That was a mistake on my part, and that's one of the things I learned also, just how important research really is, because that could be two different whole species and the interpretation behind them. Okay, but my message, right? So I brought in the Bible, and I really didn't have to. I could have just stuck to what I was doing, and that would have worked. But even if I was to do this, if I'm not able to justify my claims with the correct evidence, then my message would be off anyways. And that just goes back into the Bible. Like, if I wasn't able to take enough time to justify who I was, or give credibility to who I was using in the Bible, then I shouldn't have referenced it at all. So my message should have just been limited to fear as a motivator to be great, and not your connection to God becomes greater when you fear less. Right? I thought my objective was fine. And then it talks about the I guess the means of the speech. So it was asking, are you inspiring the audience, or what are you really doing to the audience, or why do they care? Right. So I said I care because I go through this continuously, where I was afraid to do something because of what others might think, right? But I could have, like I said earlier, I could have made it more relatable to the audience and attempted to connect more to them so that they would understand where I'm coming from and apply it to their own lives. So I guess bringing it down from 3,000 to 5,000 so that everyone in the audience would be able to understand, just in case I wasn't talking to alumni or Mr. Fleming, right? I think that was a big thing that I had to work on also. It was bringing it down so that everyone can understand it, and not assuming that they have a lot of context in my situation, just assuming that they don't know anything about it. I did get the audience wrong also. I thought I was making my own audience. Well, that's something this question asked, but I thought I was making my own audience, and I just assumed it had to be Christians since we were making a sermon style. It goes back to research. But even still with that, I guess the credibility thing really stuck with me because I didn't say anything about who these people were, where they came from, or what part of the Bible they were in, just their names and their stories. And the stories were pretty vague at that. I stopped halfway through. That could be a big misconception in my speech that most people would have missed, and then I would have lost the connection to the audience, which is very important. So really bringing it down. I want to try to work on that, I guess, the most. So taking it from 3,000 to 5,000. The next question that I added was, what kind of effects do you anticipate for the audience? I said I want them to reflect during certain parts, and others I want them to feel empowered. But when I look at what I actually said, I think that me forgetting what I was saying, and because I think this is fine, I think it does need to be added to though, because I should want the audience to do more than just reflect and feel empowered, but also be ready to apply what they heard. So motivation, I guess, maybe. But the way I said in my speech, I was kind of moving too fast in certain parts and forgetting other parts, and that caused a disconnection between the messages and the evidence and the connections. But if I would have, one, taken more time to study, and two, making the content more impactful while using less words, right? So maybe vocabulary, which also goes back into research, but vocabulary, if I increase my vocabulary, I'll probably have better or faster speeches where I can spend more time giving credibility to things or slowing down to make sure that the audience really feels anything from my dramatic pauses. I definitely didn't use as much rhetorical devices as I should have. That is a big problem also. Things like alliteration and anaphoras, similes, and metaphors, could have used more of those. That would have saved me some time also, because that would have been just as impactful without using 2 lines in 30 seconds, right? I think I used exhortative storytelling and teaching style during the speech, but the teaching, it wasn't really teaching, it was just mentioning. And if the goal is to use all 3 of those, then I should have at least a few seconds where I'm actually informing you, especially with the definitions. Like, if I would have went into my definition of fear just a little bit in the beginning, or at least after the analogy, then that would have allowed for more context also, where the audience and I would be on the same page. My roadmap initially said that I wanted to bring the audience in with the joke and the question, but I had to delete that because I thought the analogy would speak for itself and that it would engage the audience, right? I think that after I deleted it was fine because I was able to have a rise and a fall, but I think I should have put it here so I could tell myself, to give myself a mental reminder that I should have took more time on my highs and on my lows, so that when I changed, it would be more distinct and have a deeper feel. Right. So if I was on a roller coaster, the low, it'd be low here, and then it'd stay high for a while and then come back down, something like that. The shock value and the wow factors, they definitely could have been better. I didn't even really go into depth about the aha moments and the shock, and I think I really need to work on that, because even on this roadmap, it's just what I assumed would be good enough, and not pushing that to actually make sure that I include the shock and the aha moments and the wow moments, right? That probably has something to do. Yeah. Okay. Oh. I'd say, well, the next question that I edited was, what is the big problem you present? I said running from your fears will lead to regression and disconnection from God. I thought that this problem wasn't super specific to what I was talking about. Like, there was a more inclusive topic that I could have said, especially in my roadmap, that would have given me a better outcome in my speech. And I definitely could have put more time into the roadmap as a whole. And I think that's where some of my content problems went wrong, because I don't want to say I skipped, but I went through these without trying to make sure that all of them are implemented in my speech. And that could have led to some of the misconceptions or low context that I was giving the audience. But that is all I have. Thank you.